Welcome everyone to another CTC Software webinar. My name is Chris Bircher, Director of Technical Services here at CTC, and today we are going to talk about BIM Data Suite. I'm going to show you how to get going with it. Recently, we did an install setup piece. Today, I'm going to show you how it works and how to use it. But before we do that, I want to encourage everyone to ask questions if you're attending live throughout the webinar. I will be monitoring the questions panel and we'll answer them in line as I go if I catch it in time. And if I don't, I'll make sure to answer them all at the end. It's being recorded, will be on our YouTube channel shortly after this. So if you're watching our recording, please use the comment section to ask your questions, and we monitor those as well, and we'll make sure to answer them when you ask. All right, let's get going. Now, as far as our products are concerned, our BIM Data Suite is the most involved toolkit that we offer. Because it's not just Revit and a plugin. There's more at play here. There's more involved for the management of the information and dealing with other applications outside of our suites and Revit. It involves a SQL Server or some type of a database management or database program. So we chose SQL Server, and that's kind of what it's been written for. If you're good with databases and programming and all that good stuff, you're not limited to this, but we've tailored it for this. So we did a video a couple months ago showing you how to set this up, configuring SQL Server, getting your SQL Server Management Studio set up, and how the BIM Data Suite and the server components are installed and configured and everything like that. We did all that. Today, I'm going to show you how to put all of that to use. How to set up a project, how to set up a project, how to take snapshots, how to record project activity, where it's going, how that's being translated into the database, and then ultimately how we can review this information inside of Power BI, which are the default template files that we provide that come along with the installs. So I'm going to show you as much as I possibly can in the next 30, 45 minutes-ish. So real quick, I just want to recap the previous video just so you guys know where we're starting. You can see the video on our YouTube channel. It's called BIM Data Suite Server Install and Config. That's the name of the video if you want to go check that out. But effectively, we covered the SQL Server install, the BIM Data Suite server components and BIM Data Admin, the project activity server, the project snapshot server, how to get it licensed. We made edits to the firewall so that we had proper channels to communicate through. And then we got the database set up. We didn't do anything else besides that, but that's exactly what we did. So today we're going to do everything else. So the first step is we're going to set up a project inside of BIM Data Admin. So BIM Data Admin is one of the apps that allows you to kind of really get things going, sets up a project, and that way your data has a place to go outside of just this project 0 bucket that's available by default. So we're going to create projects, and those can be done manually, or we can import them from an Excel document, and there's a template you can get and put it all together. Then we're going to there's other features in here for making sure that any data that got captured before this was set up, we have ways to map that to the proper projects for both your snapshots and for your project activity. So there's different things it can do. There's other logging settings that we can manage to make sure you're getting some of the information that you care about, or not recording information that you do not care about. And then there's some additional database maintenance if you need to delete records or anything like that. So that's where we're going to start today. We're going to talk data admin first, because this is this helps you get the project going. And actually, let's do this. I'm gonna go here and here. Excuse me. So BIM Data Admin, it's this little window here. I've got my SQL Management Studio open up in the background here, so ignore that for the moment. We're focusing in on this. So right now, after you've restored the default database, the CTC BIM Data database, we need to set up our BIM Data Admin first to talk to the data server, and then which ultimately is reading and writing to our database. So when you first open the application, your data admin server might be empty. So you'll hit the change button and you need to install the computer name or the server name of the machine, of the device where we installed the BIM data admin service. And so that's potentially on the same device as your SQL Server or your project snapshot server or your project activity server if you broke them out. If you know for a fact you're gonna have a lot of traffic, a lot of snapshots, a lot of project activity, a lot of syncing to central, a lot of projects being managed all at the same time, maybe not a bad idea to have it on different, have a couple of different servers helping direct traffic. In my case, we're just doing everything off one device. And if you don't have hundreds of projects going on at any given moment, that's okay, go for it. So I'm going to type in my server name. You hit test, make sure your test is passed. Okay, great, you hit okay. That's the connection, we've established it, we're good to go. Now I can start building out the projects. So there's a couple of different ways to do this. As I mentioned, we can do the manual way by clicking the add button up here, type in the project that you want to work with. There's only two real required fields for this, and that is the office. So if you're in a if you got offices all over the country, all over the world, this is a great way to go ahead and type in your office. If you don't, it's just your group, maybe department or discipline or just the name of your company, and then it becomes a field that you don't really need to use, but it's a way to help sort things out. Then you give the project number, which is the other thing that we really care about. So I'm going to do 2024, what's today's date? 10/10.1. Project name, we'll call mine CTC office building, since that's the typical file that I like to use all the time. And then you have various other options to work with. You can put the project address, the actual building name if there is one, when the project is due or needs to be done by, you can put this in here, and that will actually give you some metrics down the road. So I'm going to pop in a date here for 2026 and fill out the address as you see fit, or fill out the rest of the information as you see fit. Now, if you're working on a lot of projects and you're trying to get a lot of data in there, that's a lot of manual data entry that you need to do. You're not stuck doing it that way. There is a template spreadsheet that you can download that you can fill out and import it back into the system. So if you right click in this projects field, you do have a, excuse me, a create project spreadsheet template, where you can effectively get an Excel file, fill it out to your heart's content, and load it back in. It's formatted in a certain way so that all the fields are there, they're in the proper order, so you don't really want to mess with it. There's no GUIDs baked into it or anything like that, so you could theoretically start your own spreadsheet from scratch, and as long as you had the fields mapped out accordingly, you could put it in there that way too. You can also do a quick export of your current project list, format it in the exact same way, fill that out, and import it back in. Either way you look at it, it works. So I've got a quick little export that I've got here that I'll just open up real quick to show you what it looks like. And here it is. It's all the fields, right? You have your project number, or ID, I should say. It's not the number. It's what we use internally to help map things up in the database. pick your office name, number, and all the other information that you may or may not need. Again, remember, these are the only two fields that we care about as far as getting the project created and off the ground. The rest of it, it's up to you. So you can fill this list out here, import it in right here. It'll update, it'll write to the database, and your information is ready to go. Now, at this point, I have a couple of options. I can either start mapping projects file location right now, or I can wait until we've got some recorded data and map it later. So there's a couple of different ways to do this. So here I can hit add and specify where the project file lives. So in my case, I have I have a version right here on my C drive. Oh, I went too fast. So there's a location of a Revit project of one of my office buildings. But then I've also got a version of this in BIM 360, right? And I do that on purpose for this exercise here. The Autodesk pathing, especially when you're using cloud formats, it's changed over the years. So it was BIM 360, then it was Autodesk Docs, and now in some cases it shows up ACC. Like there's some things are changing. I typically and then the file path itself may not necessarily be what you think it should be, right? There's double forward slashes, and it's a forward slash instead of a backslash. And so what I recommend you do is wait on setting that path until you've done everything else, okay? And I'll show you how to do that here once we get my project open. Now, the remainder of the tabs here help you organize data or do database maintenance if you want to delete a project. Maybe you had some test projects in here and you want to get rid of them because they're just taking up space, or whatever the case may be. So there is a way to organize data if it, again, if you recorded something before you had a project built, now you can map that data for both your project activity / PAL data or your snapshot data. The database maintenance, if you want to delete stuff from here, you can. The logging settings, this is probably, in my opinion, more important than some of the maintenance options. And that's just, what am I recording? Like some of these things here take up a lot of space in a database, like warnings and add-ins being used and print information. So there's a lot potentially here that you should review prior to capturing any data. And these are, for the most part, tied to the project activity logger service. So for the warnings, for the printing, for the auditing, warnings will also does tie into the snapshots because we can do things there, but for the most part, it's this PAL information. Whatever you change here, just make sure you save it before you go ahead and move on. So detailed warnings, I will just throw out there, takes up a lot of space on a database table, and that fills up really, 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 really fast. So if you don't need each and every single warning to have its own very detailed line item, I don't recommend using this one, especially if you have a lot of projects going on. I kind of like this method right here. I'm pretty happy with this one. So I'm going to save that. Now moving forward, these are the settings that are going to be used within my data recording. We're going to come back to data admin after we get some documents going, so we can show you some of this other stuff here. So for the moment, we're going to take a step back and talk about project activity logger. Now, project activity logger, or PAL that we like to call it, is a service that runs in the background on each Revit user's machine that captures the data from Revit as it happens in a way. So things like your open times and your sync to central times, and view switching and counts of items, like how many views, how many sheets, how many objects, room spaces, areas, placed families, unplaced families, enclosed rooms, redundant rooms, a bunch of stuff like that, many other functions. So there's a lot going on here that happens, and this all gets captured upon open and upon the sync to central. And that gets recorded to an explicit location temporarily on the C drive of each user's machine so that it has a place to go to get recorded into the database. And I'll show you that right now. So if I'm gonna first jump over to here to Revit, and I've got a project file right here, and this is saved up in Autodesk Docs. Okay, so we're gonna open this, but while we're opening this, we're also gonna go ahead and monitor the queued location. And the reason why I wanna monitor this queued up location is because, oh, that's not the right folder, this one is because you'll see the data logs coming in as we're working. So on everybody's machine that has the project activity logger service enabled, it will log to this location here. So it's behind the user's profile under app data local CTC software, and then we have PalQ. This folder is going to list all of the data records for that machine and for the sessions being used. So as I open up this project now, you're going to start to see files appear in this window as it's opening, and then as it's, as things progress, the files will begin to disappear. And that's just the service doing its job, right? It's running in the background, nothing we need to worry about. And, for the most part, no one knows any different unless you've told them that this is happening. Now, as I go through here and switch views and add things to the model, remove things from the model, this all starts to fluctuate and change around. So I'm just actually gonna go ahead and switch to a view, open up a schedule, and maybe open up a sheet. And what all this is doing, and then maybe put a schedule on it, right? Just to have something going on here. Break this because it's too big. And pull this back down just so it's not dragging off the page. And if I come back to my PalQ window, you'll notice that list is much smaller now. And that's because those documents have now written to the database, right? That service did its job. Now there's a couple of other things still open because I'm not done using it yet. I haven't synced to central, so other add-ins may get initialized, or I may do other things inside of my current document session that requires more data to be written to the file. These two, the rest of, well, I guess not, but the rest of the stuff isn't going away until you've done a full-blown sync to central. So now that I've done a couple of things, I'm going to save my file. We'll do a sync to central, we'll come back here, and again, as it's syncing, the data is logging. We get our reports, get saved to this queued folder before it gets pushed up to the database, okay? And again, this is all happening behind your company's firewall, right? There's nothing leaving the premises at the moment, unless you have a virtual server with your SQL information on it, right? But it's still technically at that point, it's contained within your environment. So there's nothing's going to the cloud. This cloud folder is just something else. This is all your corporate data. Okay, and that's really it, right? There's still normal day-to-day workflow. Revit users shouldn't have to do anything other than just use the product, right? There, that's just it for normal people. But I want to come back to BIM Data Admin before we move on. And the reason for that is because I want to check stuff, see if it's found out my project paths yet, and it has. Here's our office building already, right? And it's not mapped to a project. So we have a way to do a quick search of the data records that have been recorded to see what's there and where it is, right? So I can find stuff that is mapped to a project, but I've got no records because I haven't opened one yet. But apparently I've opened up a second project here that was not mapped to a project. So I can map those accordingly. So right now I can grab my office building 23 and map it to an existing project. And I'm going to map that to my new office building file. So that's how I would recommend updating your your Autodesk cloud projects. It's a lot easier. You don't have to know how the names are being formatted. Sometimes, you've got potentially additional project folders on your BIM in your ACC hubs where it's not just Autodesk Docs, CTC Office Building 2023, but then you've got project folder, and then you've got architectural, you've got structural, you've got mechanical, right? You've got all these other subfolders. You've got consumed, you've got shared, and then other discipline folders within that, right? Like, that's all part of the project. So you don't have to map it out to that level for this to work. You just have to get it to the project. And that's all that it's needed. It will be able to reconcile potentially some of those other duplicates and whatnot. There's also a way to do grab session records that are not mapped. But when you map the folder, it should go back and update the session records for you at that time. You shouldn't have to do it twice. Okay. Now that technically applies to the snapshot area as well. If I had taken a snapshot instead of doing the sync to central with the project activity, or if I didn't have the PAL service enabled, you could do the similar task here. Okay. All right. So that's how PAL, or Project Activity Logger, is working. Now, before we talk snapshots, I'm actually going to open up the SQL database real quick and just show you what it's looking like. So there, if you recall, or if you saw the step part 1, or I guess to this, or the install and configuration video, the database is broken up into 2 areas. We have a PAL section and we have a snapshot section. Your PAL section is it's prefaced accordingly, so it should be easy to track. If I open up, say, the log doc session instance, you can see now I've got the files that I've opened, and it tells me where the files are located. It says who's been working on the files and Revit version, time, all this other stuff, right? But this gets hard to use. If you're not familiar with a SQL database, like me, this is about as much as I can do right here, is just look at it. If you need to run a query or search for certain things, or truncate the lists so you're only getting data that's pertinent or that's meaningful, I'm not your guy. But we've got a place to do that does make more sense, and it is a little bit more easier to pick up, and that is the Power BI document set. So once you've confirmed that you have some data in your SQL database, there is a Power BI file for the project activity logged data. Makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on, right? So we ship one for project activity logger, we ship one for the PAL information. They are all contained as part of your installs. And once you have Data Suite installed and configured, you will get the Power BI sample files in this location here on your C drive, users, public, CTC software, and in this case, project activity logger. There's two of them here. They effectively both work the same. I opened, for this example, the ODBC version here, but the Web API one effectively works the same. And once you get that file open, which is what this is, the first thing you need to do is point it to your database, okay? And once you get the file open, you come to the Home tab, Transform Data, and Edit Parameters. On the Edit Parameters tab, you type in your server name and hit OK. That is it. That's at minimum what you need to do. You have the opportunity to come back to this at a later date and change the date range. Maybe you only need the last 90 days worth of data or 180 days. You can set that up. I don't have a date range in here, so technically at this point, I'm going to see everything all the time. And that's perfectly fine if that's how you want to leave it. But the database name is already pre-configured. It's looking at the CTC database that we restored in the setup video. You just got to give it the server instance name, which is in this case that. Then you'll be prompted to save and apply your changes. So go ahead and do that. And then you effectively at that point either get an empty Power BI file or you'll get some data if you waited till you had data already. So mine's empty. I set this up before I did the PAL information. So I am going to hit refresh and it's going to queue back to the database. It's going to load up the new information and it's going to start populating my charts and tables with it. So now we can see what my sync to central duration and open duration was, project info, deadline is approaching. Now I'm 2 years out. This is the default project 0 that comes with the product that was made in 2017. But if you want to, you can add another filter that gets rid of that if you'd like, or does not start with 0, for example. But of course, I don't think I saved that properly. So, yep, I did not. Does not. Anyway, but you can always add another filter to this to get rid of that. Okay. And that's what I've done here. So if you need to re-add the project number parameter or property, and then filter out project 0. That way it's just your current project list. And then we can start looking at the rest of this. So we have information on the project summary, right? So here we'll list all the projects. It's going to list your top models and by file size versus session time, who's the top contributor, how much time has actually been put into the project itself right now. I mean, this is the first time I've done it, right? So we're not going to have a whole heck of a lot of information here, but we can start to dig it in a little bit more. We get model summary, so you get an idea of what's being tracked. Family counts, instances or individually placed entities, what's unplaced, levels, rooms, unenclosed versus unplaced, things of that nature. Various view type breakdown in the model. And if I grab some of this, that must be a very clean file because I'm not getting much many warnings at the moment. So, and that's okay. But keep on going down. A lot of this is linked together. So as you grab a project from one tab, it'll have filtered a lot of that down the line so that you don't have to keep picking the same project number each tab you go down, right? Save you a little bit of trouble there. It's a lot of good information. pretty standard project activity that we've been acquiring as we go. Oh, I might have broke something here. And that's totally plausible because I was tinkering before I jumped on today. But then there's some stuff down here at the end that you can work with or you can start to play with. Obviously, you can always make your own page at the end and start working with all the information. You have access to everything that the project activity logger is extracting. And if you are familiar with Power BI and the database and how this is structured, go for it. Build your own charts. You can start filtering it down on a per project, and maybe a project contains 10 Revit files, right? That's still a lot of information, and potentially a couple dozen Revit users, and a lot of add-ins in its own set of warnings and performance issues. Maybe you set up an instance that's only that particular BI file is only looking at that project, and all of the files contained within that one project. Or maybe you set these up by department and you share them with your department leads, and they can go ahead and they're only worried about their particular projects. Maybe you've got healthcare projects versus multifamily housing projects versus higher education projects, right? Like that might not be a bad breakdown, and a good way to parse things out a little bit so that not everyone sees everything. And again, this is just basic day-to-day, session-to-session project activity. Now, back to the PowerPoint. There's another layer to this that we haven't talked about yet, or another feature, I should say, and that's this project snapshot exporter. Now, this allows you to capture information about your file at any given moment in time, right? That's whenever you decide to run it. And there are a series of filters that you can run through to make sure that you're grabbing the information that is meaningful or that is pertinent to you. Things like all the categories of families and the parameters contained within and the values associated with those. So maybe we want to get information from our healthcare projects and just get spatial information, right? What the rooms, the name and number of the rooms, the square footages, the departments that are associated with them, the occupancies that go along with it, and various other information. And you do that for all healthcare and only healthcare. And then you report on that, and maybe there's some historical information that you can obtain from that. Or maybe you do it for equipment, and what manufacturers are we using, and how often are we using this manufacturer versus that manufacturer, right? Now you don't actually have to go in and hunt and peck that information down and create schedules inside of your Revit projects. You can do that if you want, but with this, you can take a bunch of snapshots and look at it either in the database or in a Power BI file. Okay. And again, these settings can be saved, or these filters can be saved in a settings file, utilized on any project that you want. And in my opinion, the best part is you can schedule it, kind of set it and forget it. And that way, every week or every 2 weeks, we're getting an updated snapshot, updated records on that particular project or on a series of projects. And now we've got data to review. I'm going to show you how that works, but not in Power BI because it doesn't work there. We're going to go into Revit now. On your CTC management tab, you should have a small little BIM Data Suite button or panel with 2 buttons, really 1 button, the project snapshot exporter. This is where we set the snapshots up. Now, and again, this comes with the CTC BIM Suites installer natively. So if you just ran our installer, this BIM Data Suite panel would show up automatically if you didn't turn it off on your own. So it may already be there. And it has its own set of licensing tied to the BIM Data Suite components as a whole. And so, yeah, I'm sorry, I just had a hiccup real quick. Now, this snapshot exporter utility here, this helps you define the snapshot that you want to take, what the output needs to be, where it's going to go, and what settings you want to use. And then ultimately, we can call it the scheduler once we've got all that defined, if you want. You can also run it on demand if the file happens to already be open and you don't want to wait for a scheduled project, and you can go off to lunch so you're not, or you go to a meeting while it takes a snapshot or something. So the first thing here is it's going to give you the name of the snapshot that it's going to take, which just happens to be based off the Revit file that I'm in at the moment. And that's generally how it's going to go. And it will append date timestamp at the end. And that's pretty consistent across the board. Not a whole lot you need to worry about as far as that goes. But the filters are the part that control what data is being captured. So there is a filters button where you get to choose what you want to look at. So for starters, I'm just going to hit load defaults and just get back to the show me everything set in case it remembered my filters from before. Now I'm going to expand this out a little bit. This is everything that we can capture. So all the categories in Revit, and there are a few because we're also getting the annotation categories and the tags and the systems and everything that we have access to. Then there's the types of data, families and types. Are we, which is the content that we're placing. And then are we getting the individual instances? And do we want, if it's in a group, and then do we want the parameters and the values and information about the level and the lines and the phasing and project info and schedule data and sheet data and work sets and all the good stuff. Depending on what you're looking for and what information you're trying to capture, control this, right? If you don't need all these categories, maybe you're strictly architectural or strictly MEP, maybe you don't need some of this other information. So, and actually you can uncheck a box, click the edit button here, and begin removing information or categories that basically aren't going to be meaningful to you, right? So you can manually build out your own set of filters. Like maybe I don't need any of this analytical stuff. I'm just a designer. I'm worried more about room space, room info, and things that I'm placing in my models. So I probably run through and get rid of all the infrastructure and some of the structural information, maybe some of the MEP stuff, depending on what type of layouts we're working with and what kind of information I care about. But you can customize this list, and whatever is remaining over here when it's all said and done. Yeah, I don't need bridges for this. Let's grab all that, get rid of those two. You just kind of go through the deal. You hit OK. It's got those removed now, truncating my list a little bit. Over here, as far as data types, how much information do you really want to extract from the content in your projects? Maybe I don't need to know about imports and links at the moment, or at least traditionally, maybe I don't. Maybe that changes on different scans. Maybe I don't care about the phase data. It's a brand new project, or this is for new projects, so I can extract some of that. I can disable some of that, and maybe line patterns. And then over here, what types of parameters do I want to include? Do I want to get every parameter available, or do I want to custom sort this list as well? So in my case, I'm just going to hit include all and include all for both. So, and when it says slow parameters, that just means it's harder for our program to access quickly. So it makes it take a little bit longer. And that's why there aren't that many. But this is just, so we got like coordinates, right? And orientation information. But then there's other things like design option and option set and stuff like that. So some of those are a little bit more time consuming to get access to, just how the tool works. So if I say include all, then it's going to clear out the window, and I can know that I'm going to get orientation and directional properties and coordinate properties, and I'm just going to get everything. And same thing, and fast parameters is just all the built-ins and family parameters and most of the shared parameters. Then I can save this. This is my setup, right? I can save these settings and use them anywhere. I can also customize it even further and say, let's only do all of that on level 2, right? Maybe level 2 is a coordination nightmare for whatever reason. I want to figure out what's going on. I take a snapshot of the data on level 2, or I can leave it alone and just, again, like it was, do everything. So it's kind of up to you. I can break it down by phase, or search in the entire project, or just certain views, or same with design options. Search for the primaries or only main model. So we've got some flexibility baked into this. And again, it's all part of the same settings file that you save. If you'd like, you can load those. When you load those settings, again, it can happen for any project file that you want. We also have 2 that come along for the ride as part of the installer. One's the full snapshot. So that's everything's checked, everything's enabled. It's going to take a full snapshot of your project. We've also tailored one to be the optimal health check snapshot, which is only looking for health check related items, work sets, views, parameters, family counts, parameter counts, things like that. So that's what I'm going to choose in this case. I'm going to grab this, hit open. It's going to update all my lists, and it's showing me exactly what I'm going to get. So it's not all the slow and all the fast, but it's the important ones that I care about in this case, or that are good for a health check. But it is hitting all the categories. So, or I shouldn't say all, many of the categories. And then I'm going to hit OK. Now that's filter setup. Then we need to find out where all this is getting written to. So I for sure want to write it to my database. So in this case, because I haven't set anything else up yet, I'm going to type in my database name, which is not that. There we go. Or my server name. Sorry, not the database name, the server name. And then you hit test just to make sure it can connect. Works, great. But then I also have the ability to save a snapshot to other formats. I can do an XML, I can do a JSON, or I can save it to a model compare file. We also have the option to take model compare files, which are from BIM Project Suite, and write those into your SQL database with the snapshot utility. The snapshots are effectively doing the exact same thing, and our exporter here has a way of uncompiling a model compare file, which is the CPD file, and writing into a SQL database for you. So what I typically do when I'm doing this, because we can do a model compare file, I will actually extract to the database directly and save a model compare file as a just in case, right? Maybe something interrupts my writing to the SQL Server, like I forgot to leave my laptop plugged in and it died, or we had a power surge and it killed the power to the building, or there's a number of different issues and why something could get interrupted. The computer decided to reboot. So if that happens during the writing of data to the database, I've got a backup. I've got a fail-safe. So I always do this, and that's just that's just me. And I recommend that you do it too. So pick a spot. It doesn't add hardly any time to the snapshot itself. And then you hit go. Before I do hit go, because I'm going to, I want to show a couple other things. In the options here, you can set all of this as your defaults, right? So I always want to save to my server database. What is your server name, right? So I can set, oops, I typed that wrong, CTC, and test, it's good. Now that's always going to do that. And then I can specify other instances here. Do I always want snapshots to an XML as well? What type of, or how do I want the XML to be formatted and exported? Where are we putting it? Same thing with your JSONs. Where? And then your model compare files. Yes, I always want a model compare file. I always want it to be in the same location. Not the same folder as the Revit file. We're going to use this one instead, which, okay. Well, I'm going to cheat and copy paste it in here. I feel like it opened behind something. So we're going to do this instead, because I'm not going to make you watch me try to find out where my window went. All right, we're going to do that. So it's now I've got my default set, right? So now anytime I come back to take a snapshot, all of that information should be filled out here. You can do the same thing for where my filter libraries are coming from, right? I can force feed a shared location on those. I can default where a lot of the scheduler information goes, where the logs are being written to, what the scheduler should be putting the date and timestamp on the end of it for. If we have an email server set up with a SMTP server, we can have the app refer to that to also then send an email when the snapshots are complete. So we've got a couple of different things we can do with that. And then your default filter set. So if I'm always concerned about taking filters, snapshot filters here, then that's what I'm going to put in, right? I'm sorry, the health check. If I always want health checks by default, we can set that as the default that way. Now it's always going to do that, right? Okay, so that's kind of the app setting it up. We can schedule it. It's just calling up Windows Task Scheduler is effectively all it's doing. All right, so we got a little plugin to help you create that scheduled task. You can do it on, a daily, a weekly, pick which day of the week, pick the time of day that it's going to take it. If you've got a filter or a set of files that you want to use, go get them. And where did let's see. Yeah, let's go here. Nope, that's not it. Okay. Let me just browse for it again. Because it's back under my users. I was hoping I had it copy pasted, but I didn't. And that's okay. Filters. Oh. Oh, you know what? Okay, well, apparently I don't have my config file saved out, so for whatever reason. Oh, I know why, because I forgot to open up scheduler configs. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So, and again, this scheduler configuration window is effectively a truncated version of this, but it allows you to specify a little bit of a formula as to how the name's going to happen, right? So this is just naming it based off the file and a date timestamp. That doesn't always necessarily work for everyone. So if in a scheduled environment, you would specify your filter settings like this, and specify your SQL Server instance. And this is then applying to any snapshot that you schedule. Do you want anything else to happen here as well? Sure. And subfoldered by date and time. And then how do you want the files to be named at the end of the day? Maybe project number, project name, and do I want the date and time stamp? You can just check a box here. You can add custom text to the end here if you'd like to, if it helps with anything. And then you get an idea of what the, I set that to none. There we go. date underscore project name and underscores custom text, which is CTC plus date and time. So you've got some flexibility here on how this is all going to come out. But this is for the scheduling. So then I'll have to do a save. I'll just put it right here because I'm already looking for it. Yep, excellent. So now I've got it. Now I can go to my scheduler, create a new setup. We'll go weekly. I like every Wednesday, so I can review on Thursday. We'll do it at 12, almost 1 a.m. Health check. And I'll add my config. So C user public CTC software project snapshot exporter scheduler configurations. Hit OK. I've got the one I just made. And then now I can pick and choose which Revit files to take a snapshot of. So depending on your filter set, it does not discriminate on the model in question, right? So I can grab any discipline in this case and any version and any location and locally on my server, and I can run them all through the same health check snapshot. So if I do this now and hit OK, I'm going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that are going to kick off Wednesday at 1 a.m. And sure, why not? I'll just do it. Next week, I'm gonna have a lot of stuff. But then you hit begin. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit begin. We're going to let it run. And while it's running, I'm going to take you over to real quick because I'm starting to run out of time. I've been talking too much apparently. To jump into SQL real quick, just so I can show you the snapshot location that it's coming in, right? So we have our snapshot section in here. Each will start to track the models that you've taken a snapshot of. I did this one earlier today, but this is all now going to start to show me information about the file itself, right? So if I go to element type, here's all the different things in my model. It's tracking each family instance. Is it a system family? How many instances there are? How many parameters did it have? And so on. Then I can keep on going. I can get parameter values. We got information for your dimension segments and all this other good stuff, right? But again, we're in a SQL database. It's hard to read. So back, we've got a Power BI file for that. Also comes with the install kit. So instead of looking in the project activity folder like we did for the PAL stuff, you would look in the project snapshot exporter folder. So it's C users public CTC software project snapshot exporter. There's a Power BI file for you here. You open it. Once it's open, make sure that you're pointing to your database. So just like with the project activity logger, you hit the transform data drop down, edit parameters, type your server name in, make sure the database is right, hit OK. You'll be prompted to apply and save your file. Do so. If a snapshot's already been taken, it will start to appear in your tables. If you didn't, then take one. And it's going to start to record project information. So here's the model. Here's the one snapshot that I have. I've got the other one coming. It's not quite done yet. And you can start to see how it's looking. So we've got a good overview tab here that tells you information about the file in question right now. At the moment, I hadn't saved it yet, and because it was from the cloud, and the cloud reports file size in a weird way for whatever reason. That's why it says it's empty at the moment. I'm hoping that populates after this next snapshot. You get work sets, sheet info, and it tells you the number of different things in your project. used versus effective, or found versus unused, and a score in a sense, right? And this is kind of, you know, I'm not exactly sure the formula that goes in behind it, but to be honest, it can be adjusted. There's actually a field down here for project parameter health score, and you can go ahead and edit the data, right? So you can go to the transform data option here, which brings you into the Power Query editor. You can see how that was all put together, and potentially adjust things a little bit if you need to. But then the whole thing goes on down the line, right? We've got information about project parameters, and it lists every single project parameter in your model and effectively how it's defined. If you wanted to go ahead and grab a category, it's going to filter by that category. So now here's all the project parameters found associated with the casework category. Or maybe I want to find stuff tied to rooms, right? So here I've got a lot of parameters tied to my room category, right? And you can start to break it down a little bit more. You can also find out if it's a shared parameter versus a project or I'm sorry, a family parameter. So you've got some things you can do, and again, a lot of these tables cross filter each other. Now at this point, I'm searching all stuff. What's nice here is if you've got your files and projects set up, when you select a particular Revit file or project, here, if it finds more than one snapshot, you can narrow it down to a single snapshot, or pick two of many snapshots and start to get an idea of what was contained in one, or what's contained in both of these, and then maybe check one, see what it was there, uncheck it and check the other, and see what's different, or see what's new, see what's been removed. Things like that. Maybe at this point I had 10 work sets, but maybe in the next one I had 15 work sets for some reason, right? So you can start to kind of notice things happening in the file as you start stepping out through things. Like warnings. Right now I've got 58, and if this ever stops or finishes, I bet you we'll have more. No, it's still thinking. Okay, that's okay. I should have hit go sooner. That's all right. That's all right. But at this point, I'm coming up on the hour here. I've already talked more than I originally planned on it. So what I want to do is kind of button this up and let you guys get on your way. But as you get going, you'll start to see things like how many instances of your text are being used, or dimension types. And actually, one of the fun ones here that I like a lot is the dimension segments tab, because here it'll tell you what the dimension is, and then if it's been overridden at all. And you can see that I do have some pretty nasty looking overrides here. Dots for some reason, which likely means someone put text over the top, or they're drastically rounding things when they shouldn't be. So 1/8 inch, not so bad, but 1 inch and 3/8, that's pretty egregious. So you can see where things are happening. Yeah, and there's just a lot more going on here. And again, all the tables that are in the database are also set up here in the Power BI file. If you know how to manipulate these, please manipulate them, right? The whole point of this is to give you a good jumping off point so that you can take it to the extra step. If you want to have snapshot files per organized per department or per office, or if I got a beep, or okay, good, that part's done, that's good. Or if you want to have BI files set up to do certain things, maybe you take a snapshot because you're looking to get some information about how certain projects were done, right? What content was used, how what types of equipment we're using on these types of projects. You can collect that type of information together, whether it's in your master BI file here, or you make a separate one pointing to the database to only pull in certain tidbits. And you can start to visualize or start to get an idea of, okay, well, we're always going with this manufacturer. Why are we always going through this manufacturer? And things of that nature. So you might be able to start to learn a little bit about the design process in your office, in your firm, and hopefully you see some benefit there with that. So actually, I just had a question come up. It was a good question, so I'm going to answer it right now. When you type in your SQL name, which is my server name in this case, how does it know what path to take? Well, so a lot of that happened in the configuration aspect. So if you go back and watch the BIM Data Suite server installation and configuration video, that basically explains how that was determined and how this was set up. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I'll just quickly point this out. Each one of the services that we set up for data admin, for project snapshot, and for project activity, they all have their own SQL connection string. This is it right here. So by defining the SQL connection string with the server name, the database, and how it's going to access the database, that really is the path. And that's how it's all defined. So that is fully explained as part of the setup in the installation video. Snapshot is done, everything's successful, processing is complete. At this point, if I were to go ahead and try to refresh this, I should have a second snapshot in here. And I do. So now I've got two of them. And actually, if I jump back over to my warnings page, if I say, show me this project, now show me this project, yep. Whoa, the warnings almost doubled. So now I can start to find things out like this, right? And that's the beauty, right? So yeah, that sums it up. That kind of gets you guys going. It gets you off, gets you moving within the BIM Data Suite post installation. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. It's been a pleasure. I'm sorry I went a little long, but I really appreciate you guys sitting here and listening. Hopefully you see some benefit to this. If you have any questions that were not answered here today, think of it later. Let us know. Email us at info@ctcsoftware.com. We'll get one of us will see that and get back to you as soon as we are possibly able to. And look forward to seeing you guys at the next webinar. Thank you so much.